I need to make a leather handbag for my girlfriend's mom. But first I need to set up my machine. But before I can start sewing, I need to come up with a good design plan. My girlfriend's mom asked for a bag that looks like this. So, let's get to planning. All my projects start the same way, with this brown book. I write everything down carefully and come up with a solution for the task at hand. Today, I'm making a handbag for a client that is not to be disappointed. And she sent over some designs that she liked, so I copied one of them and decided to add some features of my own. Now that you know the backstory, let's get right into the sewing pattern. Today I was in a lazy mood, so I decided to go for a more simplistic and kind of basic design. But that doesn't mean that it won't be professional looking or unprecise. So I cut everything to my measurements that I wrote down in my little brown book. It really doesn't take that many pieces to make a handbag. So I only have these couple of squares that I need to cut out of my leather, and these are going to be the components of the whole bag. Yep, these 5 pieces. And some zippers. And some string. But not that string. And not that string. That's leather sewing string, but not that one. That one. Now, that hits the spot. Okay. Let's get started. Since I don't need that much leather for this small handbag, I decided on using some leftovers. And I was debating whether to use the more textured one or the smoother one. Which one do you think looks better? I think that the smooth one kind of looks nicer, so I'm going to go with that one. And all that's left to do is to transfer the designs and cut them out. This may look satisfying on camera, but trust me, I hate this process the most, since it requires the most precision and you can't really make that many mistakes. True, the final dimension won't be determined by the precision of my cuts, but I'm going to need to sew along these lines that I cut, and these are going to be my reference lines. So I have an incentive to make them as parallel as can be and as smooth as can be. After a couple of years of practice, I think I managed to get this process down to as fast as it can be, because I really want to get through this quickly. Okay, so leather pieces are done. Now I want to have some lining in the backpack. I don't want a full lining because that just takes way too much effort. So I want to have a half lining. And I decided on this deep purple color. I think that it looks great with the black leather. Finally, now I have everything cut out, and all that's left for me to do is to sew it together. So, let's set up the machine again, and now we can get started. Okay, the machine is prepared, and I've lined up the 2 front panels, and I'm gonna sew them together with a simple straight stitch. I get the position precise and do the first couple of goes with my hand cranking the machine. After that, I press my foot down on the foot pedal and do a reverse stitch and then move along the whole width of the leather. I'm trying to keep my stitches tight and equidistant from each other. This way I will get a consistent look. And there you go, the 2 front panels have been sewn together. These panels are not finished yet. I have these 2 bunny ears that I need to straighten out. This way the backpack will have a nicer, kind of flatter look, and I really want that. I really want to add this double stitch that will keep these 2 bunny ears down, and I think that it will add some really well needed character to the whole entirety of the bag. Since there are only a couple of panels and I only need to make a couple of stitches, I can take my time. It really doesn't need to be that fast, and I can be as precise as I want to be. So I managed to get these 2 parallel stitches down to surgical precision, and I think that they will look great on the whole backpack. Check it out. Yep, that's way flatter and looking way more professional. String selection is very important. After stitching, I have these couple of little pieces of string that are hanging out of the leather, and I need to get them flat. So what I'm doing is burning them with my lighter and then squishing them down. I'm using a nylon string, so they basically melt into the leather and become invisible. The two top panels are almost identical to the bottom ones. So basically I sew them together, glue them to bunny ears, sew two parallel lines, and then burn off the ends. And that's it. So the front side is done. I need to add the zipper. For this, I'm gonna roll up one edge of each of these pieces and place the zipper in between. By the way, the glue I'm using is just basic contact adhesive, and it really doesn't add any stability, it just fixes the leather in place as I sew it together. And here you can see where I want to place my zipper. Yep, those rolled over edges are gonna look great. Glue is very important when you are doing zippers, because it fixes it in place so that the teeth will mesh properly. And that is why I first glue everything down and only sew afterwards. I failed so many projects at this stage because my zipper teeth didn't match and I couldn't get them to mesh together, or my leather twisted in a weird way because of the zipper teeth not meshing correctly. So I take extra careful steps to make this right. I really like my sewing machine, but there are some tasks that are too difficult for the Zinger Heavy Duty. So after hitting about 5 pieces of 1mm thick leather, it really can't go through on its own. So I need to hand crank this part. And then you can move back to the foot pedal. In case you were wondering, the hand cranking trick works to up about 7 or 8mm thick leather. After that, the sewing machine really can't handle it, and it's way more hassle than just sewing it by hand. So I have the classic, fork-shaped hand leather working tools, and I usually use those when the leather gets really thick. After sewing this zipper in place, basically the front panel is completed, and I can move on to the back panel, which is just a piece of leather, and the lining, which is the next step. For the lining, I'm going to be creating a pocket on the inside on both sides. So this one can be accessed through the front panel from the outside, and the back pocket can be accessed from the inside using another small zipper. I didn't bother to measure out the lining correctly, so I'm just gonna cut off the excess. It's really cheap material and it doesn't really matter. But I've left some extra so that the pocket has some depth and you can store more things in it. By the way, when I say cheap, I don't mean that of subpar quality, because this lining material is a really cool fabric. It has some awesome design. I'm doing the same steps that I did on the other side of the backpack. So cutting, gluing and sewing. And after that, the two panels are complete. And I can finally begin assembly of the handbag. Before beginning assembly, I just do a couple of last checks to check that the zippers are working and everything is correctly measured, fits together nicely, and that I will be able to sew through it with my sewing machine. But since there aren't that many layers in this handbag, I think I can get through it without too much trouble. These are the tops of the backpack, and I need to glue these two sides together, but this way, not the other way around, because I want to have a seamless backpack and I don't want any edges showing. So I'm gonna sew it together like this, and after I'm finished, I'm gonna turn it inside out. And this will make sure that I have a seamless, beautiful little handbag. And I'm just gonna montage through this because it took a long time to sew everything together and I underestimated the thickness of the leather, so it was a pain. But I managed to power through it. And here you can see me turning it inside out and then flattening out the edges and making sure that the corners are pressed nicely into their correct places. And there you go. Now I want to extend the top. And for that, I'm gonna be using these two leather straps. These are just going to get glued together and sewn together. I decided to roll over the edges before sewing them together. And through the magic of editing, I can get through this in no time. Yep, and to join it together, there you go. So, it wasn't that hard, but it didn't turn out that great either. So I tried again, and this time I got them to be a bit flatter and a bit nicer looking. So I'm gonna glue them onto the top of the handbag and then sew them in place. The most useful feature on my sewing machine. These stitches would have been very, very difficult on an older type like Soviet machine that I was working on back in 2018. So I'm thankful that I paid the price and invested in a heavy-duty sewing machine. Okay, same issue. They are not flat. So I need to get these two parallel stitches again. And for that, I need to remove the glue that I used to fix it in place, because I need to glue the bunny ears down the other way round. I think you have picked up on the pattern. More gluing, more sewing, gluing it in place, sewing it in place, getting it flat, getting it parallel, precise, everything. Okay, now it's done. Now I'm going to roll over the top edge of the whole bag. And this is for the top zipper that I'm going to install. And I've left one corner of the whole bag open so that the zipper can have a bit of run out. This is a pretty weird geometry to sew on a zipper. So I'm gonna start with the run out and then split the zipper in half, realizing that the teeth may not mesh, and then just take it as it goes. You know, this is one of the most difficult tasks when sewing anything. Getting the zippers right really takes some skill. I'm going to switch out the foot of the sewing machine. There is just a small difference between these two feet, but this small change in width makes all the difference in precision. On this small piece, I'm starting off with a back stitch and then moving to a front stitch. This really doesn't make that much of a difference, but it helps the sewing machine feet to bite into the leather a bit more precisely. So after this, hard part's done, and I can move on to sewing the zipper onto the whole top of the backpack. I'm moving in bursts to keep the leather as tidy as can be and to keep my stitches equidistant from another. So I move a bit, then readjust, then move a bit, then readjust. Zippers are done, so I made this small cap for the ends of the zippers. It's basically a zipper pull. I'm going to attach it with some glue and then some side-to-side stitches. And this will be plenty strong for everyday use. The meat of the project is done, but I've run out of leather, so I'm gonna need something different for the straps. And I decided on this really, really thick strap leather. I consulted with my client and decided on buying this hardware. And I think that it will look great with the black handbag. Now comes the difficult part, which I really dislike, as I've told you before. I need to cut long, thin pieces of leather that need to be parallel and perfect. So I'm using a straight edge. So there you go. I think they turned out pretty cool. So, time for another montage. So, I've rolled up the edges and turned this flat piece of leather into something that is the beginning of a strap. I glued it on the center, so I think that it looks pretty consistent, And the next step is to sew along the whole length of the leather. And this is one of the most fun processes that I enjoy, because you just kind of let the leather slide through your fingers and adjust whenever necessary. Now you just have to repeat that 4 more times and you have 2 done straps. If you find any mistake in my work, please feel free to comment. I read every single comment and write a reply to every single one of them, no matter how mean or how bad-mannered they are. And I don't remove any comments, but someone said that I do. I think YouTube may be removing some of the comments that are inappropriate for, I don't know, advertisers or something. Anyway, back to the project. So basically the next step is to rivet some rivets into the side of the handbag and then attach the hardware to these rivets. And rivets are necessary because leather gets used and it could break eventually. So attaching hardware like this is kind of an easy and really fast way to get through a quite difficult part of the handbag creation process. So basically I bent the hardware out and threaded through the rivets, and then I just bent it back into shape and attached the straps, and it's all done. Now I need to thread these straps through the hardware and the bag is finished. I have a long strap and I have a short strap, and the purpose for this is so that you can adjust how long the lanyard of the handbag will be. So basically you can adjust the length of the entire long piece of strap. That's it, all done. Now, before I show you the final result, if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and leave a comment if you have any thoughts about what I had to say. Okay, here you go, the final result. This was a really fun project to complete, and I didn't really take up that much time, so I finished in about 2 days. And I think that my skills have significantly improved since my earlier projects. I recently reached 100 subscribers, which is super cool. So thanks. Anyways, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you around next time. Bye bye. See you guys.